everyone for coming here today, and I'd like to thank the Pintastic staff for giving me this opportunity to do a presentation like this. Since Steve is not here, I will be taking questions and I can hear them myself, so it'll be pretty smooth hopefully throughout the presentation. So this presentation is about my transition from doing pinball as a hobby to doing pinball as a profession, and what was involved in that and how I got here and what I'm going to do from here on out. So our overview for the presentation, we're going to start with some backstory about where pinball has been for the past 50 years and what that means for the industry historically. And I'll talk about my competitive play and how I became a very talented competitive pinball player. I'll move over into the pinball media, like the podcast, the Twitch streams, and the different YouTube videos and all that stuff, and how that helped get me more visible for my eventual transition into Stern Pinball. Then I'll pivot over to the start of my job at Stern, which started in February 2018, so I've been there for about a year and a half. And since then, I started as a support software engineer working on a couple games. Then I jumped over into the lead developer role on Black Knight, working with Steve Ritchie. So it's been an interesting journey, and we've got more stuff to cover and some inside look at some things behind the scenes that no one's seen yet on Black Knight as well. So throughout the presentation, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to come up and use this microphone. And if you just stand at the microphone, if you have a question throughout the presentation, whatever, I'll let you know if it's okay to ask it. Your questions will help make the presentation much more interesting. We'll be able to dive into some more stuff that you guys are really interested about if I'm just going to skim over it. So please feel free at any point to come up and ask questions. So I'm going to start with a little bit of backstory. This is a graph of the number of total pinball machines produced from 1960 to the year 2000. I got this data from the Internet Pinball database. Some user on Tilt forums that I cannot remember the name of right now put this graph together. So what it shows is how strong pinball was from growth from 1960 to the 1980s, when there was this transition from the electromechanical style of pinball to the modern solid-state style of pinball machines. And this is when programmers started to become necessary on pinball machines. 1975 was a key transition year when the games started to come with computers in them, which required people who knew how to do all the things pinball used to do in reels and relays, and transition that into code or software. Now, pinball hasn't looked back. It's still developed the exact same way, just with all the latest and greatest technology. But there's still software guys working with the designers since that point in time. And as you can see, when that transition happened, it didn't slow down the growth of pinball. Pinball was actually doing very, very well in the late 70s into the early 80s. There was a big crash following that with the whole video game industry, but pinball was able to rebound, and still Williams and Bally were the leaders of the industry in the early 90s, and they were producing, maybe about 100,000 games a year, which was incredible numbers. However, there was a slowdown sort of after the mid-90s, and things really ground to a halt. Williams and Bally, who was the largest manufacturer, closed their doors in the year 2000, and at that point, Stern Pinball was the only pinball manufacturer remaining in the entire world. And it remained that way for a very long time, and sales of pinball during that time period were, hadn't seen any of those previous numbers. So what this means is for young people like myself, I was born in 1993. I'm not nearly as young as Ashton here, who was born within the past 12 years, but people like me, we didn't get the opportunity to experience pinball as much as people in the past did because it had disappeared. So, if I'm born in 93, by the time I'm 7, 8 years old, maybe I can finally see over the glass and know what I'm doing. There's not any pinball machines to play. Everything transitioned at that point over to home entertainment, home media, and it's often talked about that pinball was sort of, replaced by home video games. But in my opinion, it's more just all home entertainment took away that need for people to go outside into public and play these big commercial games like pinball, like these arcade games. Everything was becoming smaller and more in the home. So a scene like this is a scene from Terminator where John Connor's in the arcade. The arcade's packed with people, they're all trying to play the new games. This was really the only place you had, unless you had an Atari, this was the only place to play the state-of-the-art modern graphic arcade games and pinball machines. And as video games for a while got better, the pinball arcades already existed, so video games were able to come in, and they were getting so popular that pinball was getting more popular, and they both worked together. So pinball and video games for a really long time were not enemies. They were very much friends. They all grew up together in the 80s. And this scene, though, to me, of the packed arcade is like completely unfamiliar to someone who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s. These arcades kind of went away. Redemption arcades, you know, they were here and there, and maybe they had one or two pinball machines, and maybe, you know, half of one was working, but you didn't have these, you know, big profitable arcades at that time period. And what a more familiar scene for me is, to me, this is sort of the epitome of what the peak of like home entertainment was. People were so sick of going and watching the movie theater on a big screen that they built movie theaters in their homes on a small screen, and it's these very barren home theater landscapes that kind of represent like probably the rock bottom of the pinball industry as well. Just no one wanted to go outside for some reason. They're all too afraid. They all wanted to stay at home, watch movies 4 months after they came out. It wasn't that fun. And this is not like someone putting pinball machines in their basement. These rooms were built in people's homes strictly to raise home values, strictly to, you know, prevent you from ever having to leave your house. And I think we're starting to get away from that. We're starting to get into more situations where people want to socialize, they want to congregate. The bar and arcade scenes are growing a lot more. Young people are getting more into pinball at different locations that are popping up. I see younger and younger competitors every day at these pinball tournaments. Their parents are helping them in most cases get to all these events. And I do see some optimism is that, you know, people don't want to just sit at home all day anymore. They want to meet people with their common interests. They want to play these games they can play in public. So someone like me would think for a long time that this was pinball, and this is a digital version of pinball that shipped with the Windows operating system. And to be honest, until I was in my teens, I didn't play a physical pinball machine. This is what I thought pinball was for a really long time. My parents weren't into pinball. I mean, we knew about it through language, through, you know, they talk about pinball, you know, in sports, oh, the ball pinball between all those people, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of know what that thing is because of the computer, but it's a very different experience to get this 2D flat game. You don't really have the physical experience, and a lot of digital pinball is really not an adequate replacement for that real physical experience you get with a game like pinball. Sort of like how playing FIFA on your computer is not the same as playing soccer outside and with your friends or on a team. So it took me until I was in college to really start getting into the pinball scene, and I want to give a shout out to the Pinball Gallery in Malvern, Pennsylvania. I know it's not too close from here, but it's a great location now with over 70 working pinball machines. I know the Rage Tilt guys go there all the time. And this was a place that was in my hometown growing up that I was able to get to. And at first, when it opened up, it was maybe a dozen machines. They've moved locations and expanded several times since then. But it was my first time ever in my entire life I'd ever seen multiple working pinball machines in one place. And that's a huge difference in experience, to actually see working pinball machines in the physical way, the way they're meant to be played, by people who are enthusiastic about pinball and to want to keep it alive and to want to keep repairing the games. And with this experience, you know, walking into this pinball arcade, you're like, wow, these things are working. Oh, okay, I see how they work now. You know, they've got these physical ways to move the ball, and you have all these shots, and there's big scoring opportunities and stuff. And what I noticed when I was there was they had some league standings posted on the wall. And that was sort of the moment, you know, on my way to the bathroom, I just caught a glimpse of like a spreadsheet on the wall. And I was going, what is that? And I saw, I was like, oh, pinball league standings. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I've heard of bowling leagues. You know, I've played in different leagues. I've heard of League of Legends, but that's something else. Pinball league standings, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. That means you can be good at pinball, which is something I didn't understand until I was 19 years old. So, and that was it. That's all it took for me to be completely sold. I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm signing up for a pinball machine. I'm going to learn how to be good at this game. I want to get these things called jackpots that I'm struggling to get. And I did wind up joining the Summer Pinball League at the Pinball Gallery in 2013. You can see my name up there, getting 3 4th places and a 3rd place on a couple games. I didn't do too well. In fact, my first pinball tournament, there's me coming in dead last. So when I started pinball, this is 2013, June 2013, my first ever pinball tournament. I was not good at all. I was really terrible at it. But going back to the pinball gallery, everyone there was very supportive. I wanted some friends to help, you know, to come with me, join me, to go to this pinball league. None of my friends wanted to go, so I just had to walk into this room filled with a bunch of strangers, middle-aged men I had never talked to before, and go, hey, I'm, you know, a young kid trying to play pinball. Like, have you ever played pinball before? No, I don't know what I'm doing. But everyone was really nice, and they were telling me, oh, go home, watch these videos, or check out this website, check out all these tutorials, check out all this stuff, and you could download. I think I first downloaded like the visual pinball simulator, which I had to set up the visual pin name to get that to work. Then the Pinball Arcade came out, so I was able to download that app and play some of the new pinball machines. And eventually I just started getting better and better, and I was more comfortable with the games, and I was addicted from day one. So I was just diving into everything, watching some competitive tournament footage, just playing the virtual games, going to the arcade as much as I could just to practice on those games once I read some rules sheets and stuff like that. There's just a lot of stuff to get into. And at the time I was going to school up at Penn State, so only in the summertime I was really able to get to this really nice pinball location, the Pinball Gallery in Downingtown. When I was at school, I did find this place. This was a record store and hookah lounge called Chronic Town. And they didn't serve any alcohol because, you know, drinking age is 21. They got to find something else they could sell to college kids. So it's music and hookah, and then a few pinball machines there. So some of the first games I played on were Twilight Zone, Lord of the Rings, Transformers, and Wizard of Oz. Those are my first pinball machines I played and learned. And eventually I started talking to the owner there because he noticed me, you know, playing pinball all day and not. He was into pinball, obviously, so that's why he has the games out there. He goes, oh, you know, you're into pinball? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really into pinball. I'm like, would you want to have a tournament here? And he goes, yeah, sure, if you could promote it, do everything, and then we'll put the games on free play for the tournament. And so we did that, and he reached out to some people in the State College area, the Center County, Pennsylvania area. It's pretty much just Penn State and the economy that is based around Penn State. Not a big area, but we put out in the local newspaper two different articles that covered the tournament to help promote it. I think maybe a dozen people showed up, but still it was cool. I got photographs of me playing Data East Star Wars. My buddy Jerry, the only other student who played pinball in that tournament, was photographed playing Lord of the Rings. Jerry's now a very successful speedrunner. He has a channel called Jercro, and he sort of hung up the pinball for a while to focus on his Sonic Stories world records and other video game accomplishments he holds right now. But the two of us, plus some of the other people in the local community, held a tournament. And it was great. We met a bunch of people who were like, oh, you know, pinball, I haven't played pinball since the 90s. And that's kind of the common story you were hearing back then. It was, oh, I didn't even know there was pinball. I haven't seen it for 20 years. And these things, I think now it's probably, for many of us in this room, we've played pinball long enough that we know, like, yeah, this thing is growing. There's a lot more places, a lot more people putting games on location. There's these models at work. If you're in the bar industry, to have pinball there, it brings people in. If you're in the family entertainment center, it can also help because, you know, maybe dad wants to play pinball while kids want to play some of the other new games, even if the new game is really an old game like Space Invaders, but it's blown up on a big size. There's a lot more going on in the pinball and just gaming industry in general, and coin-op. So following kind of my first dive into pinball, I got the opportunity to visit the Papa facility. Unfortunately now the Papa facility is not open, but they do run the Replay FX show and pinball tournament every year. And this place, if you've never been, was awesome. 400 amazing condition, perfect working pinball machines. Competitors from around the world would come fly in every year to compete for like a $7,000 top prize. And there's tons of videos from the Papa facility as well. There's different tutorial videos, different gameplay videos. This stuff was what really hooked me when I first started playing pinball into, okay, this is what pinball could be. This could be this really cool, high skill game, you know, just like any other sport. So I was really interested, and I just happened to be in Pittsburgh on this week of August, even though I lived in the Philly area, not the Pittsburgh area. And I was just meeting some friends from a previous hobby I was involved with. We all kind of met up in Pittsburgh. It was the closest area between the East Coast and the Midwest where all of us could meet. And we knew one guy there, and I'm like, hey guys, there's this pinball thing. It's like every game's like 50 cents. Like, you want to come check it out? And then we spent like 3 days there in a row just playing all these pinball machines. And I tried to qualify for the C division in that tournament, and I came in something like 90th place. So once again, I was not good at pinball for a really long time. As I met more people in pinball and I started to get a little more ambitious with it, I first decided to fly out to a pinball tournament. I finally thought in 2015, October 2015, like, I think I'm good enough to fly to a tournament and compete, and that I won't completely lose all my money. So I flew out to the Expo tournament in the Chicago area with my friend Greg Pavarelli, who's playing in the tournament right now. He's too busy to come to this seminar and see me. And the two of us, we competed in the tournament, and we did all right. I think I came up in like 36th place, but that was the first time I ever competed head-to-head with some of the best players, like Keith Elwin and Zach Sharp and Lyman Sheets, all of whom are now my coworkers. So it was nice to be able to meet some of those really high-level players, people who have been around pinball for a really long time, because they have so much knowledge and so much passion for the game, and they're really eager and enthusiastic to share it. And there is a really big difference between, competing in the different types of tournaments there are. The small tournaments that I was playing on a monthly basis at the Pinball Gallery were not like this 150-player tournament in Chicago where you just got a super high level of competition. You've got 20 hours to qualify, and people are using all 20 of those hours to stand in line and wait. It's really a different level of passion at these high-level tournaments. And my advice would be, if anyone plays in those small-time tournaments and is worried about the big tournaments, the one you should go to before you put it off is Pinburg. It's a 1,000-player match play competition, and every single person who goes to that tournament goes, "This is the most fun thing ever. I want to do this again for the rest of my life." And so sometimes people can, sometimes people can, but there's a really dedicated tournament there. You're playing 40 different games, lots of different people there. You'll meet a lot of friends. You'll see them next year. You'll see them the year after that. That's the best experience, and that'll get you into like what the big competitive pinball scene is all about, and why it's so addicting for people to go spend $1,000 to fly somewhere for a weekend and play pinball for the whole entire weekend and not do anything else. So eventually, as I continued to practice, continued to compete, I started to have some real success in tournaments. And here I am. This was the first circuit event I ever won. This is the Flippers OBX tournament. I believe it's also a Stern Pro Circuit event this year. It usually takes place in early November when there's not a lot of people renting beach houses. You can get a really nice deal on a beach house and play in an awesome pinball tournament. So that's my recommendation for this tournament. And I'm playing with some very strong competitors here, like Steve Bowden, Jason Werdrick, Levy Naiman, Alexander Kashmarchik, Trent Augenstein, and this was a really strong field, and this was my first big victory, so this probably helped for the future for me to get some more credibility and recognition as my pinball rank was improving, that I kind of knew what I was doing, and I knew a lot about pinball, which has helped me now to get the job here at Stern. So, In addition to all the competition stuff, I also started making some tutorial videos, and I'll play this one now. Multiplyer's about to expire, I believe.
Oh, is that
no, it's changed.
No, my God, dude.
I've never seen that one get jammed.
Click that. So, bought some camera equipment to start streaming pinball, and we were there with Steve Keeler at Rock Fantasy. Steph was there with me playing the brand new Star Wars game 2 years ago. Pintastic actually had one of the first Star Wars games. It was the first time I ever played it here at this show 2 years ago. And so the streaming thing was just sort of another opportunity to share what I had learned and to have a lot more fun with a different format of playing pinball, where you could share with other people online, try to bring some more people into it, and just get some, recordings of all your footage so you can practice and learn from that. All in all, to buy the streaming equipment for me was about $300 for all the cameras and other stands and everything, and the USB stuff I hooked up. If you guys know Jack Danger of Dead Flip, he's got a great resource on his page of what to buy to get into streaming. If you have the computer for it, that's the biggest expense, then you probably would be surprised by how little additional expense it is to actually start pinball streaming. And this community of pinball streamers has grown very significantly to the point where you can pretty much turn on Twitch at any time of day and watch someone playing pinball. The list of streaming channels right now is really huge, and this really does have a big impact on helping grow pinball. Anywhere there's exposure, anytime someone could just happen to stumble upon pinball, they might have that same experience. Like, oh, you knew about this 20 years ago, haven't thought about it much, but here it is back. Where's this place? Middletown, New York. Oh, I can go up there, and maybe they'll come to your favorite pinball arcade and meet you. And in addition to this stuff, I was also on the different podcasts. Those are very popular as well. All the pinball media really does help promote pinball throughout the year. We make pinball machines at Stern, and that making pinball machines is necessary for pinball to survive, but it also needs the enthusiasm of people talking about it and people sharing their experiences with pinball to bring even more people into pinball. That's my opinion, at least. I gotta go to the next one. Sorry about this. Okay. So one major event that got a lot of exposure for pinball that I participated in early 2017 was the Awesome Games Done Quick charity event. This charity event is a 7-day-long speedrunning showcase where the people who can beat video games the fastest all come together to show off their skills and how fast they are. As part of this event, we were the official side stream of the event called Pinball Done Quick, which meant for that same 7 days, we would come up with ways to beat pinball machines the fastest. And when we got bored of that, then we'd keep playing pinball machines, because while the Awesome Games Done Quick event has 150 different people playing in it, we only had 7 or 8 of us. So it's always good to have more people here, because Austin and I at the night shift would see just how much we could blow up a game like Star Trek. So I'll play this video here.
Let's go. See, he's doing the strategy I was like picking on him about the whole week. He got to warp 9.1, which doubles his score, doubles the playfield for a certain period of time. So his
set. Look at all this. 148. Woo! Clip that.
That needs to be highlighted. Clip it. Clip it.
I passed him in one shot.
Look at this, man. This is like the
So this event was a lot of fun. All in all, this event raised over $2 million for the Prevent Cancer Foundation. So this was a really awesome thing to be part of. Awesome way to expose pinball to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people who were coming in the chat all week going, oh, pinball, that's pretty cool. Where can I play pinball? And we'd engage with them on the chat, and they go, oh, that's great, that's awesome. So exposing pinball to people is still very necessary, but it's really rewarding to do so in any capacity. So a big shout out to anyone who helps doing that, either by running a location or doing a pinball podcast, doing a pinball stream. Every part of that really does help our whole hobby grow even more and more and bring more great people in. So, and you might get noticed and be able to join the industry, or even develop your own custom game. All that stuff's really great and helps the whole entire pinball community.
Huge then.
Okay. After this, this doesn't look good, but I started making some YouTube videos as well to also help people with some of the more basics, like the tutorials and everything. This is still an area I think other people could get into as well. I brought this really nice DSLR camera to get some of these.
Hey guys, I'm Timballs, and today I'm going to be doing a comprehensive overview on how to aim correctly in pinball. There's a lot of tutorials about how to aim, but they pretty much only cover the basics. You shoot the ball earlier on the flipper, you'll shoot the shot earlier, or a backhand. You shoot later on the flipper, you'll shoot later, or a forehand. But I'm going to use some key concepts here to help you improve your aim.
So yeah, just more pinball media. This is all like really good exposure for pinball. That's my point. I probably made this point enough, so I'm going to move on. Are there any questions so far? Okay.
I really like
Hello, I have a random question.
Hello.
What, are you going to trade shows on behalf of Stern, and how do you like that?
I have gone to a few trade shows on behalf of Stern, not as many as my colleague Steve here, but we do go to like the Midwest Gaming Classic show in Milwaukee. That's an easy drive for us. It's an hour and a half
Industry
away.
shows?
And Chicago Expo and things like that. But so for the general coin-op trade shows, I have not been to any of those yet. But some of the other
We're not really invited. They used to be invited, but they don't invite us anymore. It's a salesman thing.
Yeah, Steve knows better than us. We do have a big sales team at Stern, and they often go to all these shows, and they're always trying to make deals with licensing, with other partners that can help us. So they make deals with private label guys like Supreme and everything. So they're doing all that fun stuff. We get locked in a box and told to make a pinball machine at work, but no, it's fine. So February 2017, this is when it was announced that I started working at Stern. And I wanted to point out here, this is our shout out in the Stern of the Union announcement. We recently staffed up a lot in software. There's 2 other full-time guys joined the company in 2016. Rick Nagel, who you may know as the lead software developer on Iron Maiden. And he's also helped with the Munsters in a support role, and he's doing other stuff now at work. And also Brett Rubin, who I've worked with on 3 games in a row now, and he brought a lot of experience from the game industry himself into these different aspects that we were lacking. And he's worked with me on Iron Maiden, Deadpool, and also Black Knight, and it's been a treat to work with him. In total, all the software developers who worked on Black Knight, that'd be myself, Corey Stupp, Rayson Chang, Brent Rubin, Mark Vitarelli, Lyman Sheets helped a bit on getting some of the first Whitewood stuff set up for me, and also assisting throughout the project, and also Tanya Kleiss helped. So we've got like 7 guys in the office, and everyone's willing to share information. So it's been really nice at Stern that we've been able to staff up. You've recently seen releases of code, like there was more Guardians code, then there was Kiss code and Aerosmith code. We've gotten a lot more time to bring some of these games up, and we will get caught up with all the games that you guys want us to get caught up on very soon, and we'll be bringing all sorts of new things into our new games. So our software in general has gotten a lot more comfortable. We've got more teams, more expansion, so it's been very good there. And so the process of getting the job at Stern, I'll go back to that. So in November 2016, I was playing at the 24-hour battle tournament at the Sanctum in Connecticut. They're open Mondays, that location. And Zach Sharp was there. Zach Sharp had recently been hired as the director of marketing at Stern Pinball, and he was also a top-ranked pinball player. And we were talking, we were playing in a group, there's some downtime, and I was like, yeah, I'm probably gonna should start looking for a new job, see what other opportunities are out there. I was at IBM in Poughkeepsie, and I wasn't sure if Poughkeepsie was really the home for me for the long term. And he goes, oh, that's interesting, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a software developer. He's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And that was it, I didn't think anything of it. But it just so happened that George Gomez, who is my boss and Steve's boss, had just put out the message that Stern Pinball is looking for some young people to get on board to help out. And he's like, if you know anyone who might be passionate, enthusiastic, willing to move to Chicago, and wants to work as a software developer in pinball, let me know. So then a week or two goes by, and Zach says, hey, you have a resume or anything you can send over this way? And I said, yeah, I can get one to you. When do you need it? You want it this afternoon? He's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So got my resume all polished up, added a bunch more of the pinball stuff I had worked on, and I sent it over to Zach. And about a week later, I got an email from Stern, and they said they wanted to have a phone interview with me. So I had a phone interview with Dwight Sullivan and Mark Vitarelli, our systems guy, Tanya Clace, Mark Wayna, our executive producer. I didn't really know many of these guys at the time, but now I work with them every day. And they just asked me a few questions about pinball, what I thought was fun, what I didn't think was fun. They asked me, like, what do you not like about a recent Stern pinball game? Which was a pretty tough question to ask, but I answered it. And they said, okay, that's great. Would you be able to come out to Chicago for an interview? So I said, yeah, sure. And I flew out to Chicago for an interview a couple weeks after that. And George Gomez met me. He brought me through the factory. And he said, we're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to some other software guys, see how they like you and the team, and see what's going on. So I had a long interview with Mark Vitarelli, a long interview with Tanya Pleiss. I had interviews with Steve Ritchie, Keith Elwin, Lonnie Robb, Lyman Sheets, Dwight Sullivan. Said hello to me, but he said he was so busy working on Star Wars at the time that he went back and he was working on Star Wars. So, yeah, question?
What was your answer to that question?
Which question?
What is a shot that you didn't like?
Oh, what
Or a
was,
feature that you didn't like on a game?
I said I didn't like on Aerosmith how once the modes are over, you don't really get anything special from beating them. They just sort of end. And I suggested putting some sort of scoop award out there to collect, to give you an extra incentive to collect the mode faster. That was my answer. And the interview process was very long. It took the entire day. I showed up wearing a suit. Steve said I looked like a dork. And
Not necessary.
yeah, it was unnecessary, but I was very excited. And at the end of the day, they decided to give me the job offer to come in as a entry-level or a mid-level software engineer to support some of the existing games. And I had said, you know, I want to be a lead software developer. I think I have a lot of familiarity with pinball. I know a lot about it. And they said, well, we'll see. So moving forward, oh yeah, here's a little Easter egg. I contacted the Stern Facebook page in 2014 to see if they would hire me. I got very eager. And I got a response to email George Gomez, who did not reply to the email. I heard nothing. I tried again in 2015, also nothing.
It's
So
a
it
bunch
took
of
little
lies,
while.
that's why.
There's no lies.
You lied on your resume. No, I just blew you off.
Yeah, it's fine. Stern's been doing a lot better recently. At the end of the year, you've seen 25% growth over the year. And when the business does better, what I've learned is we're able to bring more people in, get more people making games, get the games quality better, and it's when we have more people buying the games, more sources of revenue of the company is able to reinvest and bring in people. So I think that's why everyone should be optimistic about the future of pinball now, is that we are reinvesting in the future at Stern with people like myself, Keith Elwin, people who, and other people we haven't hired yet, who will eventually carry the company to its next level. So I moved to Chicago, and this is what it looks like. Just kidding, this is what it looks like. So it's a frozen 25 below zero temperatures. I don't know what's going on with that city, but it's cold. But living there has been great. It's been a comfortable commute for me. I live in the city. I commute to Elk Grove Village, where the Stern facility is. Highly recommend to everyone, if you can, to go visit the Stern Pinball Factory. If you want to contact Zach Sharp, zach.sharp@sternpinball.com. If you happen to be in the area, he can set up a tour with you. And it's really awesome to see the 350 people we have working at Stern every day in this 110,000 square foot facility putting these games together, and how much work goes into it. And we really appreciate everyone at Stern, at least from our side in the design, everyone working on the line, some of those people have been there a long, long time. their expertise and their skill to get all those games made it's great. So a brief overview of what I've done at Stern. I started working on Iron Maiden as a support guy, and they tossed me a few light shows and some speech integration to throw in, and it was something to get me up to speed. And throughout this time, I was talking with Keith Elwin. Keith's a quiet guy. I hadn't talked to him too much outside of working at Stern, but he's very knowledgeable at pinball, and he does the rules to his own games. So we talked about, he was like, oh, it would be nice if this happened, and I was like, oh, maybe I can figure that out. And I would ask Rick, the lead programmer, like, you mind if I give this a shot? And he's like, yeah, sure, if you want to do that, put it in, let me know if you want me to review the code. And so I was able to put a few rules in, a few other stuff, and I was doing well, and the project was in great shape. And the next project coming up was, Keith, was Deadpool. And Tanya Kless had been in the driver's seat on Deadpool, and that had a much longer way to go until release, which means there's more work to do. And so Tanya and I had talked at work too, and he's like, you want to come on board on Deadpool? And I was like, yeah, sure, what are you thinking about the rules? He's like, I've kind of got this general overview, but I need someone to help me with it. And so Tanya and I worked together very well on that project to drill down into the different rule sets and the different paths in that game, and I had helped implement parts of those, like the team-up system and some of the major battle modes, and we worked with another guy to develop this whole fighting engine in the game. We were communicating between the rules on the shots to trigger the fighting game events. It was really a fun project to work on, a lot of stuff hooked up in there. That game recently, I've heard really great things about it, and Tanya's been working hard on it to get the code to 1.0 and put everything he wanted in the game. And so if they're out here today, there's a beautiful premium in the vendor area if you want to check that game out. The game was awesome, a lot of fun to work on. And during this project, Steve was working away on Black Knight, and he was looking for a lead software guy because he worked with Dwight on the past few games, and Dwight was working on Munsters, and the time frame worked out that he needed someone else. And so Steve said, I'll give the kid a shot. I think. Do you regret that decision, Steve?
You were forced on me.
I was forced on you.
No, he wasn't. I picked him. He's got a lot of energy. He's done a great job on Black Knight. I like his style. And he listens to me sometimes.
Yeah, so we worked on Black Knight, Sword of Rage, and this is what it was. It starts with just the title. It was just, we're going to make another Black Knight game. And Steve had a lot of work put into it on all his different ideas and different mechs he wanted in the game and different shots. And I joined on board, and we talked about what we were doing. We talked with our artist, Kevin O'Connor, about what he had created for the game, and we started working on it. Your question?
Yeah, how do you go about choosing which game will be chosen for like a production run?
Like which title?
Yeah, like which concept you're going to go with.
That's a very involved process. It involves pretty much everyone in development. For the most part, we're working on licensed games, so we need the relationships with the licensors. And then from those games, the design team has input on what games they would like to make. Our sales teams have input on what games they think would be, the biggest hits, and they would work the best in their schedule. And so we all come up with, what we all think is the best, and then projects eventually get chosen as a whole effort between George, our guys, our executive team, and then we work them out in the schedule, and that's how we decide what games we're working on next. So it can be any number of things that go into it, timing-wise.
And when you do that, do you actually have a production run in mind, how many you're going to actually create for something like that? Because I'm sure it varies from one project to another.
So with our Extern, we will build as many games as there's demand for. And so at Stern Pinball, we've made vault editions of games, which are games that have ended their production run, and we renew our licensing agreement, and we make a new set of games because the demand's so high for those games. So we don't target fixed numbers. We'll anticipate certain amounts of game sales based on, everything going into it, but we always will make games and there's demand for them. We'll keep making them at Stern, if we can.
Thank you.
One more question?
Hello. Yeah, actually, because it actually ties into the first question. You mentioned how everything so far has been always a license. Everything's always tied into something. And even Black Knight, I guess technically it was a license because you guys had to work that out with William, or whoever owns the Williams rights now. Do you ever see a time when Stern might actually come up with an original, like back in the old days where they'll let a guy like Steve Ritchie put an original idea out, or does it have to be tied in?
Oh, we have done this recently with Whoa Nelly. That was a completely original property there. It was based on, classic design, but it was like a completely different thing. And we always talk about what's the best thing to do, because our goal is to get pinball in front of the most people. Sell the most games, get people the happiest with the games. The possibility of doing an original game is always there. It's just a question of, is the demand there? Because even in our previous seminar, we saw really licensed games that people were working with, because that's sort of become what people expect in pinball now, is you work with a license and a concept. I think for that reason, there's so many strong licenses out there, we're going to default to those, but it doesn't mean we can't do something like a Whoa Nelly, or even, this was a licensed game, so I'm not going to say it wasn't, but even less popular licenses or something like that. It's always possible.
The business about this being a license, this is a license it's from a good friend. It's from Matt Cristiano and Rick Bartlett, and they trust us to make a good game, and we are gonna, and it's like, this is the closest thing I could get to an original theme and have it be acceptable to management. And so this is where it's at. And we try to choose licenses. We do it scientifically. If I'm going to be working on a game, I have to love it. That's the first thing. We have learned already a long time ago, if a designer's working on a game that he doesn't love, it's not going to be everything it could be. That's the first thing. The second thing is science. You look at popularity of songs. If you want to do a band, or just movies, or anything you want to do, I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your time. But I just want to tell people that, what we go through to get that license. A lot of it is political, but not always. And it's like, if you've got the goods on a good title that you really believe would be popular to 70 or 80% of the people. Let's look at AC/DC. AC/DC has listeners from 7 years old on their little cell phones and iPods, all the way up to guys my age and older, okay, in their 70s. That's a big old demographic. You almost can't lose. And with their record sales, we chose the ones that sold the most. And also, that was a great license because we didn't get, the guy said, do what you want, don't mention Bon Scott, that's it. Okay. And we did.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a player standpoint, if it's a fun game, it doesn't really matter if there's a license or not. And if the license winds up getting more casual people to play it, so much the better.
It is true, but management prefers licenses because they tend to attract people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Just for the reason of, it's like, it's the Man from U.N.C.L.E. Oh, I love that show, I have to have it. That's not a good example. All right, I'm going to stop interrupting Tim's seminar.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
So I think I'm low on time here. Are you going to cut me off in a few minutes, or do I have a little more time? A little more time. Okay.
Keep going.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the unseen stuff really quickly on Black Knight. So this is something no one's seen before. These are some of the concept art paintings for two of the monsters in Black Knight. These were done by a member of our graphics team named Denai, Kitty Vathana. He prefers to just go by Denai. And he just paints in black and white here these different monster concepts, and he puts them in front of us to talk about which ones are going to go in the game. And so on the left you have the Hydra heads, the individual Hydra heads in the water, and then you have the different versions that could have been the rock monster. All of these could have been characters in the game, but we had to focus on just one. And once we did, we got the characteristics of the ones we wanted. We got some storyboards of them in the game here, so this is some of the rock monsters, or the fire elementals attacks in the game. We called him the Magma Beast, that's what it was. And we had another artist, Josh Clay, who was the lead motion graphics artist in the game, put together these storyboards. And this, eventually became the 3D animation. Denai built up all these guys in 3D, painted really nice with, reference to scale and everything. And this was, a really good overview of like, what's the vibe of this game? This wound up being some of the stuff I sent to Scott Ian, who wound up doing the music on the game, along with Brendan Small, because they're like, okay, this is the level, it's called the fire level. He's like, well, what's in the fire level? I'm like, this guy. He's like, okay, I can make a song about this guy. So that was sort of how the process went for us. And while we had these concepts, it got everyone on the art team familiar with what the look of the characters would be. Now, with all the characters that Kevin O'Connor created, like the Black Knight, like all the skeletons, we also took those guys as the concept art, even though it was the finished art, and we put it in the game. Yes?
I was just wondering how, who chose Scott Ian? Was Scott Ian, is he a pinball enthusiast, or was Brendan from that block, right?
Right.
And how were they involved? Because there were, all the internet rumors. First, it was like Kerry King was doing the guitar work, and then it was this one. I was just wondering how Scott Ian became involved.
I'm Scott Ian, and I play in Anthrax, and I play in The Damn Things. I play in Motor Sister. I play in SOD. I play with Pearl. I play lots of guitars.
I am the Black Knight.
A good friend of mine who works at Stern Pinball thought it would be a cool idea to have a super metal soundtrack for the new Black Knight machine. I got the email asking if I would want to be involved, and as a lover of pinball, I thought it would be a great crossover, playing pinball with thrash metal behind it. Just sounded like a lot of fun to me. My inspiration for the music was the Black Knight. It was the character. Stern would send me over photographs and little videos of what they were doing with the machine and the artwork, and I just kind of started imagining this Black Knight character and the different situations he gets himself into throughout the course of the game, and that was the inspiration. Some of the creatures like the sandworms or the hell hand, or it was all that kind of stuff that inspired the actual riffs. My favorite track is, the one that comes to mind first is March of the Sandworm, because it's so huge. It sounds like these Leviathan-type creatures. Oh man, I can love the fight. Can I swear? I love the final product. Look at this thing. It's so badass. The attitude of the game and the attitude of the music go hand in hand. I've always been a pinball guy over a video game guy. I've never been a video game guy at all. It's always been about pinball for me. It's just something that's been a part of my life for so long. Black Knight kicks ass. It is a very aggressive and intense game.
So on Black Knight, Steve had done the music with Dan Borden and Brian Schmidt on Black Knight 2000. They created some awesome music.
Oh yeah.
And we were looking for someone who was available. Only Steve was available, those other two guys weren't available. We were looking for someone to bring the soundtrack up. And our director of licensing, Jody Dankberg, said he knew someone. And he said, if you think you would use Scott Ian from Anthrax, he's a huge pinball enthusiast. Brendan Small as well as a pinball enthusiast, and he's worked with us before on other games. And we said, yeah, sure, I think so. And we gave him a call, Jody and myself, when he was in Arkansas playing on his tour with Slayer and Lamb of God and all those other bands. And we said, do you have any free time available? He said, I should be free in about January or February. I'm like, could you knock out a whole game soundtrack in that time period? He's like, yeah, I think so. So it was a really long wait for us. But then he got back from his tour, and one day he submitted his version, the new version of the Black Knight 2000 main theme, and we all listened to it in the office. That was probably one of the best days I've ever had at Stern Pinball. It's just like, this is right for the game, this is awesome. And the vibe solidified too with what we were doing on the art side. All the fire and the burning castle and all the brutality and the heavy metal really works together.
It's a very heavy metal pinball machine.
It is.
And I mean, you just put out Iron Maiden last year. I was like, this is the most metal game, but wait a minute, you did Iron Maiden too, but they're both great.
Other games are namby-pamby.
Yeah.
Alright. So wrapping it up here, some 3D concepts of skeletons. Steve created all these skeletons with their different goofy names. It was Mason, Spirit, Bernie, which is the Ed Robertson character, Edgy, and Butcher. Those are the 5 skeletons up there. They have some small roles in the games and a little bit of speech. And I'll show you just 2 videos real quick of one other thing we do on the art team. This is what we call as like a animatic. So this takes our storyboards and turns it into something we could stub in the game to check out timings and everything. So here's the black and white replay animatic. There's no sound, sorry. The sound's separate. So that's how we get the timing and kind of like, this is what we're gonna make in 3D for the game. And then from there I go like, it's 2 seconds too long. And they go, really? I go, yeah. So then we chop it down 2 seconds and we make our final version. So yeah, that's some behind the scenes of the development process on the LCD games and what we do for those. That's all I have actually. So are there any other questions before I get kicked out?
You'll be back.
I'll be back.
Tomorrow.
Yes, I will, with Steve.
With Steve.
All right, thank you everyone.
Cool.